This is Scratch Your Own Itch, the one show that delivers the conversations that we're afraid to share, but need to. This show is all about creating a life worth living. I'm Logan Tyler Nelson, and I'm your host. So, you're going to hear conversations with creators and entrepreneurs talk about what they do, their current and past traumas, how they became who they are, and what they are truly curious about. This is the show where we talk about the things we think about a lot, but need to talk about more. Please take note that this show is not a substitute for actually creating a life worth living, because this show will stir your beliefs, make you question what it means to create a life worth living. So my promise to you is to always give you one question to answer for yourself today to start turning your dreams into a reality. Hello friends, hello. So, before I get into this interview with Danny Matranga, by the way, I want to just announce that his Instagram is Dynamic Danny, instead of the one I had him say at the very end. So, to get that out of the way, I'll put in the show notes as well, Dynamic Danny, not Mind Pump Danny. Anyways, this is going to be an episode just around fitness. That is why you want to find Danny out on Instagram, because this dude is a fitness guru, in the making at least. I mean, he's not the first guy that pops up when you type in fitness on Google, but really who is? Because let's just face it, the fitness industry is so saturated, and it becomes almost anxietal just thinking about who to actually follow and what diet plan to get on. Like, should I intermittent fast? Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do ketogenic? Should I do low carb? Should I carb cycle? What's good for weight loss? Or what's good for muscle gain? Should I eat carbs? Should I not eat carbs? Should I eat fats? What fats should I eat? I know, it's mind-boggling. And this is an episode that just goes through and gives you a simple blueprint on where to go and find the right resources for you and the expert advice to really find out what's going to work best for you. Because you are what matters. And so, with that being said, I want you to find Danny on Instagram and follow his stuff, as well as really ask yourself this one question. Who am I going to go to for expert fitness advice? Just choose a couple, because there's so many out there that if you're anything like me, you can almost get overwhelmed with all the amount of information out there. So that's why I am just going to leave it off there. That was my phone. Sorry about that in the background. It's real life happening in the moment. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode with Danny Matranga and myself. Hey, you. Just you. Yeah, just you. The one who's struggling with their body image because, well, you can always be more muscular, leaner, healthier, more flexible, or stronger. Well, I want you to know, first of all, you're not alone in your fitness aspirations. I mean, every day we look at ourselves in the mirror and we never ever really accept what we look like. And doing this over and over and over is hard. I know, because I'm there with you. And the more difficult part is knowing who to listen to, because we live in a digital age where anyone who has a decent smartphone can hook themselves up with a sick-looking Instagram by using some different filters and angles to make their body look amazing. Show off those shirtless pics, show off those booty pics. And now they come to you, if you've got a decent body, with all these questions. Questions ranging from what to eat, when to eat, how to sleep, when to sleep, how to work out, what's the perfect diet for me, right? Well, if you're confused by all the overload of information about fitness, then this episode is for you. Danny wants to make an impact in the lives of others through my mission for health and wellness, and he believes that this impact will help their physical fitness and wellness. And he has worked with over 100 of clients and has witnessed the aid of fitness in both their mental, emotional, and overall health, thus strengthening their resilience by improving self-confidence, self-image, and self-love, which totally aligns with the mission of this show. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce you guys all to Danny Matranga. How you doing, Danny, man?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. Dude, thanks for coming on Scratch Your Own Itch.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Dude, so it's Matranga, right?
It's actually Matranga, but I'll give you some leeway there, seeing as how 9 out of 10 people that take a shot at that mess it up the first time.
Dude, I'm the worst. I'm the worst, man.
That was pretty close. That was better than most. So no problem.
Well, luckily this show is all about just messing up and falling on your face and the traumas that go along with it. So I'm gonna kind of just go with it and be okay that I messed up with saying your last name. I tried my hardest too to look up like other videos of people saying your last name, and there was really nothing there. So
I could care less, man. It's totally fine. I really don't care.
thanks, Danny, man. Well, hey, man, I wanna make some impact with you and make some people feel a little less alone. So I'd like to. I know that you're a personal trainer and you have had over 100. I mean, just a bunch of clients that probably struggle with self-body image. And I'd love to kind of talk about your story too, about how you've struggled with depression and body image issues. So do some reverse hacking and also some possibility hacking. And if you don't mind sharing us that story about depression or self-body image issues and what you do today now to get better.
Yeah, man. So, first and foremost, the my utilization of exercise initially started as a kind of a means of getting out of a depression in early adulthood, in my teenage years. That's really when I started working out. I didn't necessarily work out for any other reason than I needed to just blow off some steam at the time. And ironically, that ended up becoming my passion in my career. But on the note of depression and self-image and self-worth, all the things that I know that this show is about, I had a pretty tumultuous upbringing with my parents. They went through a divorce. My father got into a pretty destructive marriage after my mother and him split up. That was definitely not the ideal picture and not the ideal relationship situation that you would want to see growing up. But again, I think that brought with it some resilience for me down the line. My mom wasn't particularly involved in my life in my teenage years, so I didn't have that female figure. And my father was dealing with an illness, so there was a lot of confusion, a lot of frustration, a lot of anger, and an inability to kind of put that into words at 16, 17 years old because the world was so new to me. I didn't really understand. I felt like I was a victim. I felt like I couldn't get out of that loop. And then obviously you're dealing with a lot of the trials and tribulations of just being a teenager, which is difficult enough, even if, everything in your life is balanced, so to speak. It's hard to grow up in society, especially the way things are now. So I ended up working out purely for sports And I found that I really enjoyed it as a means of blowing off steam. And I fell in love with fitness and working out and the sport of bodybuilding and powerlifting. And I used that very early on to kind of manage my depression. And I still do to this day.
Dude, that's awesome. It is so it really it was just sort of an outlet and a way of to just escape from life, right? And it's odd how some of us choose alcohol or some of us choose drugs or some of us choose some there's gotta always be a form of just escapism and I know that for me fitness has been a form of escapism and I know that if it wasn't for fitness I would probably be um I don't know where I would be. I probably wouldn't be around, to be honest. This podcast and also just fitness alone has definitely kept me going. But I want to ask you about specifically, was there any conversations growing up that you had with people in which uh, you just you had to go work out because someone maybe said like, "Hey, Danny, you're looking small," or "Danny,
Oh,
you
yeah,
you know
absolutely.
that kind of stuff."
Growing up, I was always relatively undersized. So whatever sport I was involved in, I was never the biggest person on the team, and I'm only about 5'9" anyway. So to be successful in athletics, some degree of vertical height comes into play. So I wasn't going to win that game. So I was definitely determined to at least be strong and capable um, in sport by doing resistance training and trying to maximize my athletic potential. But I had a few coaches tell me that I wouldn't be able to play at the higher levels or at the next level unless I was stronger. And that really drove me into the weight room. And it wasn't a particularly negative feedback. And don't get me wrong, I would never talk to a teenager the way my coaches talk to me.
What would they
But
say? What would they say?
oh, like, oh, you're way too small. Come on, you got to put some meat on those bones. Like, predominantly negative feedback, nothing positive. But I think that's the majority of youth coaching in this society. And we definitely have issues with how we coach our youth in sport. That's a topic for another day. That's a rabbit hole that I could go down um, pretty deep. But I am so fortunate that the majority of my influence to work out was relatively positive, in that the issues I had with the image of my body um, actually came along later, kind of as you mentioned earlier, with the the pervasiveness of social media in the more recent years. That's really been a bigger piece for me than anything.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'd love to get into that then. Because we do live in that age where we can get on the phone and we go on there, for example, like I love Instagram because it is a great source for how to get tips and tricks from people that I look up to, like one that we both are fans of being Mind Pump, like seeing Sal's work and seeing Justin and also Adam's work and the sort of like nutrition expertise that they actually give out and the myths that they often bust. But let's face it, 5 minutes into it, you're comparing yourself to the way that everybody else looks. And so now you have this self body image issue of like, okay, now I got to do what they're doing. And I'd like to kind of get into what you have found with your clients that's just I mean, obviously, the answers are going to probably range from it depends, but I would definitely like to get into that sort of like, what are a few things that people can start doing today with nutrition? And what are myths like, what the fasting myth? Like, are you going to lose muscle if you work out fasted? Or, those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, we can hit those one at a time for sure. So I if
Yeah,
I
I realized that
which
was
one
like
would
a.
you like me to focus on first? Because there's so many things. There's social media, there's fasting, there's
Yeah.
working out, there's so much. Should we start with the social media and whatnot, or
Yeah,
how do
I'd
you want
love
to
to.
attack that?
Yeah, I think the social media is a big one just because of so many people suffering from social media compare.
Yeah, I think that that is extremely pervasive now more so than ever. I see this quite often with males and females, and I'm gonna just throw it out there that I think the majority of fitness celebrities on Instagram provide very little actionable or valuable content to their subscribers or followers. They're pretty much exclusively providing pseudo pornographic material of themselves that may or may not motivate you, but I think more often than not discourages a great deal of people. Um, do not get me wrong, there are some incredible influencers on social media that post predominantly positive content, but the majority of the fitness space, especially on Instagram, is dominated by men and women who either are they have incredible physiques and they're displaying that with zero substance behind it whatsoever. And if you are a highly impressionable novice trainee or young man or young woman, and every time you scroll, every other image are these incredible physiques, that can be somewhat damaging time and time again if there's no substantial or actionable content to go along with it. You're just left wondering, well, how do they look like that? Why don't I look like that? And I think if you do that every day for hours a day, which most young people do, spend hours a day on social media, that is a destructive feedback loop for your body image and self image.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's amazing how bad you can feel just being on Instagram for like 4 minutes. And then also not to mention the sort of constant hatred that happens within those comments. Like I just that's why I'm so lucky to have, I think, podcasting is my main contributor to where I get my knowledge, because there's just less hate that's happening on podcasts. And there's less sort of like bashing someone's techniques, and that's what it's also another thing that I'd really like to bring up too is like, what have you seen that's actually worked for your clients as far as a fitness routine? Like, is it body part splits? Is it full body workouts? Like, what do you
Oh,
think
yeah,
generally works?
I can definitely get into that. I would like to close that last thing. I kind of want to comment on that. Yeah, I think that humanity ends where social media commenting begins. There is so much destructive communication on social media, whether it's uh, haters, so to speak, or just uh, unsubstantiated claims going back and forth. There's a lot of negativity in that space. So again, I really want to get the message out there that the majority of your fitness and wellness information is probably better sourced from podcasts or places on the internet with a lot less buzz and a lot less garbage going on than Instagram or Facebook. But the next question, as for what body part split or what training routine works best, um, that is completely dependent on the individual's level of training, their familiarity with fitness and working out. So I approach it in several different ways. The big question, and it's always going to be the number one question, is what is the goal of the client or what is the goal of the individual? And then why is this important to the client and why does this matter to the individual? And those two tenets really make up the core of the program. The first thing is what do they want to accomplish? And then obviously the second and the major driver is why does that matter to them? Uh, After you have that as a trainer, a strength and conditioning coach, then program design has several different modalities and methodologies by which you could go about accomplishing that goal. There's obviously some concrete factors, but there's a million ways to skin a cat.
I love that you say that. There are a million ways to skin a cat. Certainly. And that's what's so tough about it. And that's, I think, why it's so important to actually hire a coach and invest in a coach. If you're thinking about, like, this could be for the person too that is like, hey, I actually do love working out, but I feel like I work out too much and I overwork out. But I want to make money doing this, so I should become a personal trainer. And I think before you even become a personal trainer, and you can agree with me or disagree with me, should you first get a coach and see if one is going to actually maybe help you get to your fitness goals, and then if you like the way they do their fitness routine and how their lifestyle is, would you recommend them maybe becoming a personal trainer themselves?
Yeah, I think that obviously having a coach or a positive influence in that space is going to be huge. I'm sorry, my phone keeps buzzing, by the way. I can't find out how I'm going to shut that off.
No, I couldn't even
Anyway,
hear it. No worries.
okay, okay. Um, I think that having a coach is very important. And again, that's somebody who's going to kind of introduce you to that realm. And we have coaches in sport, we have trainers, we have strength and conditioning coaches, whoever it may be that has that influence on you to potentially pursue personal training, wellness coaching, whatever it may be. Having somebody who you can model yourself after is super important. I don't think it's a requisite, though, for being successful. I think the biggest determinant in someone's success in this industry is their desire to help other people, first and foremost. It's significantly less important than your love of health and fitness, because I have met dozens of trainers who love health and fitness, but they don't love other people enough to branch out into helping them. So the biggest determinant of someone's success in personal training, wellness coaching, whatever you want to call it, is, do they have a genuine passion and desire to help other people?
Hey, I got a really quick message to deliver to you. If you're looking to start telling your own story, because honestly, podcasting is one of the best ways to do it, as well as grow your social network. And I'm not talking about just growing your social network, broadening it. I'm talking about putting yourself in contacts with people that cost usually millions and thousands of dollars just to talk to a couple minutes. And they're willing to come on your podcast because they also want to share their story. And they want to instruct people in the right way and not just feel like they're wasting their time, because, well, time is finite. It's valuable. So if you need to start your own podcast like soon, please contact me at Logan at LoganTylerNelson.com. Again, that's Logan at LoganTylerNelson.com. And I'm only taking a few people only because I want to make sure that their message is right. And it's not just starting a podcast because they thought it would be cool, but really starting a podcast in order to create a life worth living and making impact that matters. Well, back to my interview. Dude, I'm so happy you say that. Like, oh, that fills me up, because that really does help someone find out. Because like purpose right now is a huge buzzword, and you finding out your why and finding out why you're on this planet. And I think it comes down to really just that one question of, do you really love helping people when it comes down to possibly sacrificing your fitness gains or your fitness levels? Because if you're not ready to sacrifice those, like, then unfortunately maybe personal training isn't for you, because you're just all about yourself and your own selfish goals, which is fine. Like, go start that YouTube channel and just work on just having a nice body like all the time. But thank you for saying that, Danny, man.
Yeah, I mean, and there's so many ways that you can make an impact in that space. But if you don't have compassion and empathy, working one on one with clients is extremely difficult and very taxing. And perhaps, the avenue for you is social media, or maybe that is YouTube, or both. But it's very difficult to work one on one with general population client hell if you're not extremely empathetic and very passionate about making an impact on their entire life.
Ah, yeah, it's just I don't think that's spoken about very much. At least you don't hear about that at all. Because dude, I mean, how many people have you met at the gym that are like, dude, I kind of want to do what you're doing, like personal training. That's cool. Like, you get to pay to work out. and it's like, not exactly, right? I mean, there's so much more than meets the eye.
Yeah, I mean, I've met dozens, and working in fitness management, I actually try to source trainers who I believe have high levels of empathy or high levels of interpersonal skills, because I can teach you the ins and outs of fitness. I can teach you the periodization mechanics and nutritional practices that will make somebody successful in their weight loss goals or their performance goals. But I cannot teach you how to connect with people and care about people. That is something that is developed over time and maybe innate and really shines in some people more than others. And those are the people that I really look to take under my wing and develop, because I'm at a point where my main goal is developing other trainers, because that makes a bigger impact than developing my clients. And don't get me wrong, I have clientele, quite a few, but if I can find and create and mold a great trainer, he's going to make, or she's going to take 20 or 30 people and change their lives. So that's kind of my big focus.
Yeah, I love that all. I kind of want to pivot a little bit and ask you about your relationship with diet, and what you often give people just right away. They come to you and they go, all right, I really just, my goal is to lose fat and build muscle, because of course they want both. You know what I mean? What do you tell that client?
Well, the first thing I tell almost every client I get whose main goal is to lose weight is I need them to get more, 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 and more. More protein, more water, more vegetables, and more sleep. And inevitably they look back at me like, "What?" And I tell them, I need you to get more water because you're probably dehydrated, more protein because you're probably not getting enough, more vegetables because you probably don't eat them, and more sleep because you're probably way too stressed. And then if they can handle that, we can move into the nuances of nutrition and in dieting. But because that is such a difficult thing to modify in people, because nutrition is emotional, it's behavioral, it's deeper than just making the right decision every time. It's so much more complex than that. I'm a firm believer that when we're talking about nutrition, we have to start very, very simple. We have to take the client and empower them by getting as many small, easy wins, little baby victories as we possibly can, and continue to feed that positive feedback loop of independence and control over their nutritional choices, because the majority of people do not have conscious control of their eating habits. They have a very difficult time controlling what they eat or understanding what to eat. So you have to start simple.
Have you, like, what was, and you don't have to obviously come out and say anything about a client, but have you seen a lot of clients have eating disorders that they didn't even know that they have had, and what do you do with them then?
Yeah, I've worked with clients who have both eating disorders and disordered eating. And if a client has a genuine eating disorder, um, like an anorexia or a bulimia or something within that realm, it's beyond me. As much as I'd love to help, that person needs counseling and help beyond what I believe I'm capable of doing. Can I be a linchpin in this relationship with that person? Absolutely, I can be there to help them, but I think that they need to be referred out. As for people who have disordered eating habits, I see this all the time. I see people that eat the same exact food every day at the same exact time, and they refuse to deviate from that. I see people that completely take entire food groups out of their diet because they think they're bad. I see people that add entire food groups into their diet because they think they're superfoods that are going to save them. And I see these types of disordered eating habits all the time. And I genuinely believe that the best nutritional protocol is one that is not only sustainable, but one that really nourishes the body, all 11 organ systems within the body, and allows the person to do what they want in life and not be hyper restricted.
That's awesome. That's great to hear, because it's covering so many more bases. and we don't think long term very often. We think it's just easy to think short term. Like, I mean, really, it is to go, okay, this is working for me now. And then all of a sudden, in 4 months when your knees are shot because you've been running 14 miles a day or with food, when all of a sudden you just cannot take the constant headaches because of hunger pangs or all that stuff that goes into under eating. And I mean, it's sad. It really is sad. But and that's the hardest part, is to be able to take on the change when the change has to happen. What is one form of eating that you really do think is safe, in which people can like? Do you recommend eating 5 meals a day, 6 meals a day, 2 meals a day? What do you think is best for someone? Or maybe not the word best,
Um,
but you think
yeah, I
is
think
sustainable. Yeah.
optimal and sustainable is all relative to lifestyle. So I think the number of meals you eat per day should align itself with what you do in that day and what your performance needs are for that day. Again, with more clients than not, I find that there is actually a degree of under eating going on. And a lot of people get a relationship with food that they think it is the enemy. So having to reintroduce food into their diet to get them to lose weight is like this incredible paradigm shifting moment that can usually result in backlash or them completely abandoning the program because you're telling them to eat more. But
What
it,
specific?
it
I'm sorry to interrupt. What specific protein, carbohydrates, or fats usually?
if I'm going to have somebody eat more,
Yeah.
generally they're under eating on carbohydrate. So I will usually try to reintroduce some form of complex carbohydrate because I find when most people cut out a food group, they completely eliminate carbohydrate from the diet. And again, their intention is good. When they cut out carbohydrate, what they're really trying to cut out is sugar. But what they end up cutting out is an energy source that can fuel you through the day. So I'm fine if you want to cut out sugar, go ahead. But that doesn't mean that you don't need grains and things like that in your diet to fuel your lifestyle. And it doesn't have to be grains, obviously. It could be rices, it could be potatoes, it could be many things. But all they're eating all day is protein, which is great. But more people than not need some degree of carbohydrate as an energy source in their diet. Most people cannot go strictly ketogenic sustainably. And I find that most people that are under eating are usually depriving themselves of carbohydrate. They live a pretty lethargic lifestyle and they get to this place of adapted thermogenesis or metabolic damage where they can't lose weight no matter how hard they work out and no matter how much they starve themselves.
Which is like the worst.
Yeah, it's
Um,
a recipe for implosion.
yeah, and that's ultimately what manifests in being depressed. I mean, let's face it. Like, we look at ourselves every single day, and there's, even though maybe people aren't seeing it, you see it. You feel like you're the only one who has this problem of working out really, really hard. I mean, I know myself, like, sometimes you get into a rabbit hole where that thing that was working is just no longer working, of under eating, or maybe working out on the cardio treadmill a little bit too much, and then going, okay, well, nothing is working. I'm on this treadmill for like, 6 hours a day, and I got to get off. Like, so what is, what is one what is one thing people can do today, as far as like taking their nutrition into their power, and actually start feeling better about themselves?
That's a great question. I like the word eat with intent or the phrase eat with intent. Eat with the intent to nourish your body, eat with the intent to fuel your body. A healthy body and a well fueled body is generally a good looking body. A starved body, a deprived body is generally not a great looking body. And if you rearrange your relationship with food to be focused on wellness rather than focus on aesthetic, the aesthetic will usually follow. But if you focus your nutritional eating habits exclusively on aesthetic and you're not extremely well versed in the intricacies of nutrition, you can do a lot of damage to the other areas of your life. So eat with intent to be well and be healthy. Eat a diversified array of foods from different food groups. Get a coach, a nutritionist, a dietitian to work with you on this. Be patient. Don't rush the process. And remember that at the end of the day, one meal, one fall up, one slip up is not going to make or break you. Just be patient and trust the process.
Ah, thank you for saying that. One meal, one slip up, one bad workout, all that stuff. Like it's not going to. It's so minuscule, and it's the same thing with forming a habit, right? Like all those things, people are probably overwhelmed with the amount of things that they feel like they need to do. Right, like oh, get a coach. Okay, now I've got to like make sure I eat enough carbohydrates, like all that stuff. 1% better is better than not doing anything at all. So, if you're having, I think if you're having 4 sodas a day, even if they're diet sodas, like having maybe 3 sodas the next day, or, maybe 2 sodas and drinking 1 glass of water because you're not drinking any water right now. Like those mini little habits, I think they start to pile up and you become the person that you actually want to start to becoming, and more so even feeling better, which is even the best, is when you feel a certain way, you don't want to go back to how you used to feel, right?
Yeah, you have to win one battle at a time if you ever intend to win the war.
Yo, dude,
It's
that's
the only
huge.
way to do it.
I love that. Hey man, I'd love to ask you, how much sleep should we get? Like, sleep is hard, man. Like, I know that like some days I'm actually more tired when I'm sleeping 8 hours a night. What's up with that?
Yeah, that's actually a pretty great question. I myself am not a sleep expert. However, what I do know about sleep and the majority of the information that I know about sleep, I got from Dr. Amy Bender. She's quite well versed in the intricacies of sleep science for performance. But I think, as a general rule of thumb, we should shoot for 6 to 8 hours of sleep per night. Try to get restful sleep. Consistently sleep through that full 6 to 8 hours. If you wake up feeling lethargic, meaning you like slept longer than normal, and you wake up and you're even more tired, most likely what happened was you woke up in one of your deeper sleep cycles, and it's really hard to break out of that deep sleep cycle. A lot of times, what happens with people when they nap is they nap for about 30 minutes, they wake up, they feel great. But if they nap for 40 minutes, they wake up and they're super crabby and they just want to go back to sleep. Well, what happened in that 10 minutes was you started to trickle into a deep sleep cycle and your body started to shut down and go into its parasympathetic state of ultimate relaxation. And then you get abruptly woken up from that. You can be very upset and angry. So I don't recommend long naps. I like to keep my naps under 20, and I like to shoot for 6 to 8 hours of restful sleep per night. I like to make sure that I put technology away at least 30 minutes to an hour prior to going to sleep to let my circadian rhythm fully slip into effect, because all of that light in your eyes can definitely affect the sleep quality that you have. And I think that those tips should be more than sufficient for somebody who's just looking to improve their sleeping habits.
Thanks, man, for to do. You don't say you're an expert, but that sounded like pretty expert advice to me, my friend. That was great. Yeah, I'm gonna check out Amy Bender, right?
Yeah, I think her
Amy Bender.
Instagram or social media is Sleep for Sport, but she's got a lot of information out there on the internet space as it pertains to sleeping for athletes. So if it's good enough for Olympic level athletes, it's good enough for me, I like to say. So she's a
Yeah.
great resource. And look into terms like sleep hygiene and things like that, because in the space that is the internet, there's a ton of great information out there about getting a healthy night's sleep and creating a really healthy morning and evening routine. And then the last thing I would say as it pertains to getting up in the morning is ditch the snooze button. Every time you hit that snooze button, you get a little dopamine drip, and you actually end up creating a feedback loop of wanting to continually hit that snooze button. And I know people that can hit that sucker 8 to 10 times, and they love to wake up every 10 minutes and hit it and keep going back. And it's a pretty vicious cycle. Uh, when your alarm goes up, when your alarm goes off, get up, get acclimated, set that routine, or get up when the sun's out. When your body woke up the first time is probably more than sufficient sleep. Get up, get moving. Um, don't continue to hit the snooze, and move on with your day.
Yeah, that's I didn't know that. That's actually a really good point that you bring up, is that dopamine shot, which is something that I kind of want to ask you, is where do you get those dopamine shots within your work nowadays?
Oh man, nothing feels better to me than occasionally I'll get like a text message from a client, um, where after a workout's ended, I'll be at home. Maybe I'm relaxing. Maybe I'm cooking in the kitchen and my phone will buzz. And I got one last week, and my client just said, "Nothing in my life makes me feel better than when I finish a really great workout. I feel so good." And that type of impact really makes me feel awesome. So when I see somebody in my life making improvements, or especially in that health and wellness space, because that's what I'm passionate about, that's what really lights me up. That's what makes me happy. That's what makes me excited. That's what gets my dopamine flaring up. So any improvement with my clients or breakthroughs with my clients is really what makes me excited.
That's dude, that feedback, to hear that is just you don't realize the impact that you're having on people unless they voice it out. And let's face it, people are I don't like to look in terms of people being lazy, but people are lazy, and they often, even if they're getting results from something that they found on the internet, or they're getting results from a friend, we can sometimes create bad habits, which is not even telling that friend thank you, or that personal trainer maybe of yours, like, hey, thanks. Like, I feel really, really good after these workouts, and to just hear someone actually take the initiative to actually say, hey, Danny, thank you so much for what you've done. Because honestly, I couldn't imagine myself without that workout now. It's like I just get this great high off of it, which is addicting too, in an awesome way. But also, do you have any clients right now that are over exercising, and what do you do with them that are just like they love that? Because I know myself. I'm asking this for personal reasons, because I know I myself like love working out, and to take 2 days off is just really hard.
Yeah, I currently don't. I'm so selective with my clientele at this point. I mean, the majority of them are just completely dialed in, but being in the industry for 5 years, absolutely, I see this all the time. The ideology that more is better is very pervasive in our space, and that's simply not the case. When it comes to exercise, the goal, and this is where I get a little bit sciencey, so you can totally stop me if I go off the deep end here for your listener base, but the goal should be to train at what we call the minimum effective stimulus, or slightly above that, meaning the right amount of exercise to stimulate the goal you want. So if your goal is to get strong, you do the amount of exercise you need to get strong. If your goal is to build muscle hypertrophy, you do enough volume to stimulate hypertrophy. And we would categorize that as what I call the MES, or the minimum effective stimulus. And then at the top range, you have what we call the maximum recoverable volume, which is the highest amount of work that you can do to generate that stimulus. And your goal as a trainee who wants to train sustainable is to land somewhere in between the minimum effective dose and the maximum recoverable volume, which is to say, enough to get it done, but not too much to burn out. Because if you go above what you can recover from, you will not elicit the adaptation, period. And I run into, for every one person I find that doesn't work out hard enough, I find quite a few who overdo it, or they just don't train intelligently, or maybe they don't train too hard, but they train for too long. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, yeah, of course. That's why the experts are the experts. But this does correlate so much with people's ability to just be happy, because I think like oftentimes we're not happy because we feel like we didn't do enough or we need more in life. So it correlates, I believe, at least directly to your levels in just having a good mood on things, to be able to go home and say, okay, I did enough at the gym, instead of going home and being like, gosh, I could have done more, and feeling bad about yourself, and then going on Instagram, and it's the same, vicious circle of going on Instagram and be like, I should have worked out harder. But I think that's a myth right there that you busted, is the minimum effective dose. So what is the minimum effective dose? And that could be a it depends answer. But what's something to keep it stupid simple for the average person that just is trying to get into building some muscle and building some strength? How many days a week would you recommend them working out?
Well, so the latest research generally finds that a volume of anywhere between 8 to 10 sets per week per muscle group is sufficient for hypertrophy. And obviously, if you've been training for a little bit longer, you probably need to do a bit more than that. But research also shows that going extremely high on volume, you get to a place of diminishing marginal return. So if 10 is good and 15 is a little bit better, it doesn't mean that 30 is really great. As a matter of fact, 30 and 15 might have close to the same hypertrophy result. So I would recommend between 10 and 15 sets per muscle group. And you can go ahead and spread that out into 2 to 3 training sessions per week. So, depending on what split or what workout routine you like to do, if you like to do total body 3 times a week, or a push pull leg, or upper lower, or whatever, if you fall within those parameters, you'll probably be successful. And just to kind of cap off my last point, the National Strength and Conditioning Association and the NSCA is pretty concurrent with some of the symptoms of overtraining, and they can be categorized with the following. So I'm reading this for you from the NSCA text. Too much training can lead to mood disturbances, included but not limited to depression, loss of appetite, loss of competitive drive, joy in life, loss of libido, apathy, anxiety, irritability. So, too much training disrupts your hormonal profile, and it can absolutely make things like depression and anxiety and irritability actually worse. So, you want to be very careful with how you use exercise as a treatment for things like anxiety and depression, because while it can be extremely beneficial, more is not always better.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's amazing to hear. That's really, really, really useful for people that are on that other spectrum. You know what I mean? I know that I gained some listeners from people that are at the gym a lot, and I know I love it too. But if I'm at the gym, usually I'm just walking on the treadmill, which is a simple, like, I'll get, my 40,000 steps in a week or whatever, just by walking on the treadmill and doing, because I do a lot of tech geek stuff, on the internet, and if I'm editing my podcast or all that kind of stuff, I just rather be walking. Or if I'm reading, I often will fall asleep reading if I'm just sitting down, stagnated, not doing anything. But I don't really push the running too much, and I don't think anybody should unless they're training for a marathon. Um, but that's just my opinion. I'm not an expert like you or.
You're not far off. Cardio is usually the variable with most people looking to either get lean, shredded, or just lose weight. That's usually overdone. Most people overdo it on the cardio. So, my prescription for most people is anywhere between uh, 50 to 80 minutes in the gym with, or 50 to 90 minutes, I should say, with no more than, 60 minutes spent on rigorous exercise. So If you're really pushing it, say you go to the gym for 90 minutes and you're going to do a 15-minute warm up and maybe 15 minutes of mobility and train hard for an hour, that's plenty. Get out of there. Or if you're someone like myself who has pretty good mobility, I'll generally just, do a 5 minute global warm up, dynamic warm up, and I'll get right into my workout, and I'm usually done in under an hour. Because if as you continue to push it, you start to get a pretty negative hormonal profile or release of things like cortisol that can be pretty damaging and stressful in high amounts.
Ah, yeah, and that the cortisol, if anybody isn't in I guess in with the cortisol. Cortisol is that awesome energy that you actually feel sometimes. It's the reason why like sometimes you don't need a cup of coffee until like I think mid afternoon because your cortisol is spiked in the morning from waking up. Which is different every day, of course, depending on your hydration levels and depending on your sleep measurement. But I think that oftentimes people can like feel that cortisol being that awesome like energy high, and you get addicted to that, of course. But if it happens too often during the week or multiple times a day, which oftentimes people like to do that's when things can go south real fast. And you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally high cortisol is not necessarily a bad thing. Um, but not cortisol and endorphin should not be confused. Endorphin is a hormone that is released endogenously when exercise is rigorous. It is a natural analgesic. It's a natural pain reliever. That's what contributes to that runner's high. Endorphin is literally the morphine within, so, it contributes to a runner's high, but systemically high cortisol levels can lead to things like weight gain, flushed face, mood swings, anxiety, libido being in the pits, higher risk of osteoporosis, acne, tons of things. So if you're really overworking yourself all the time in the gym and your cortisol is always at a very high level, that can be quite damaging.
Ay. So what's one thing someone can, uh, I guess, what's one little measurement other than libido, and maybe sleep just being totally off. What's a couple of things people can start doing to actually like recovering from that over exercising? Is it just taking an entire week off the gym and just doing only walking, or is it, what do you recommend?
Oh, that's a great question. So again, that is really a big old it depends. Um, I would recommend if somebody is genuinely having hormonal dysfunction from working out too much, that they try to wean themselves down to a recoverable workout. They try to lower what they're doing till they get to a place where that symptomology starts to go away. And that shows up all the time when I find clients that are over exercising and under eating and they're not losing weight. And I have them cut back on their workouts and increase their food. And all of a sudden you're losing weight. What does that say? That says that you were probably living in a hormonal environment that was disrupted and suboptimal. So a lot of times, my best recommendation for somebody who's training really, really hard and not seeing results is to cut back a little bit on the training. Give your body the opportunity to adapt instead of destroying it every time you go to the gym.
I think that's a good way to end it off. Although I would like to ask you just because you've given so many amazing actionable tips right off the bat, really for those people that I think are both spectrums, either the people that haven't worked out very much and want to kind of introduce themselves to workouts, or that person that's just doing it too much, and that could be the very cause of you're just feeling like you suck in life, and that is not cool at all. I know what it's like to be depressed. That's exactly why I started this show, and I know what it's like to even more so to not only feel like you're depressed, but to actually be numb and to not feel like you have the ability or the power to actually change until it gets so bad to where you have to change. And there's a great quote that I like to try to live by. smart people learn off of their own mistakes, but geniuses learn off of others. And so if you can take anything from today's conversation with Danny and myself, please just Instagram, tweet it, Facebook it, and get connected with us. But before we end it out, I'm going to ask you about 4 or 5, sort of scratching the itch curiosity questions that I like to ask most of my guests. If you're down for that, Danny.
Yeah, let's go.
Awesome, dude. First thing I like to ask, just to make someone feel a little bit less alone, is what's a deep thought that you're having during the day that you just kind of wish you didn't have, but you keep having it? And dude, if you don't feel like going into this, don't be pressured. But I know a deep thought for me is just so I don't feel like you're doing this alone. For me is just I often have that thought about just not being lovable. So what's that one bad thought that you keep having?
It's not necessarily bad, but I'm always wondering, what am I going to do next? What's my next move? How am I going to level up? How am I going to be better? Putting a lot of pressure on myself to do big things, make big moves, and not really living in the moment. If I make any mistake more frequently than another, it's consistent failure to live in the moment and not appreciating what I have in front of me. And that is something that I'm going to work on in 2018 this year, is to be more appreciative, show more gratitude for what I have in each and every moment.
Dude, I believe 100% you'll get there. The Power of Now is a great book. It's
Eckhart
currently,
Tolle. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. What's a, what's, cause, I think oftentimes we live in quotes and mantras. What's a current quote or mantra that you are currently trying to adopt into your life?
Oh my gosh, it's so funny because I live my life with quotes. I love quotes. And
Same
of
here.
course, now that I'm on the spot, I can't come up with a quote for you. Which is pseudo embarrassing because I'm a big quote guy. But I really like a mantra from Napoleon Hill's work and his writing, if you're familiar with him,
Yeah,
on developing persistence and the 4 steps to developing persistence, which are having a definite purpose, okay, knowing your why, having a definite plan and sticking to it, and really making sure that you follow it thoroughly with intent. uh, Having a mind closed off to discouraging and negative influences, and being, okay with failing, but not accepting discouragement and being positive, and forming friendly alliances with other people who are going to encourage you to reach your goals. So having a purpose, a plan, resilience, and community, that's a big mantra for me, and keeping those people around me that are going to support me is huge.
that is enormous, my man. That is, yeah, like you said, huge. I'm not that familiar with Napoleon Hill's work. I do like his one quote: "If you can't make great happen, then take small, great actions every single day." So that's a quote that I really love from Napoleon Hill. Dude, I'm gonna check out the four, he calls it 4 pillars of success.
I don't know what he would like, label that particular mantra, but you can find it in Think and Grow Rich,
Nice.
which is one of his more popular works.
Yeah. Think and Grow Rich. That is one of my Bibles, for sure. That I just always need to dig into just taking 1 or 2 quotes from that. Hey man, so this is a weird question, but I think it's very helpful for people. Sometimes we often feel like we're just ourselves too much, and in order to actually get better, we need to maybe adopt someone else's way of doing things. So if you were to be anyone for an entire month, who would you want to be and why?
Probably Elon Musk. the founder of Tesla, just
That's
because I appreciate not only what he's doing for the environment and for the planet and for us as a species, um, but I admire his resilience in the face of adversity. He's had more people than not tell him that his dreams were impossible, not just improbable, but impossible. You know, been laughed out of rooms, been told he was crazy, and what he's been able to accomplish in the face of adversity, the company he's built in Tesla, the service he's doing for humanity, to me is something that is extremely admirable. And if I could be him for a month, just to see and feel how hard he works to put his dreams into action and make them reality would be, I think, invaluable.
dude, that is, yeah, he's the man. You should check out I don't know if you've ever checked out his interview with oh god, I'm blanking right now on the actual, but he's got I'm sure a multitude of interviews you can check out on YouTube.
I know what you're talking about too. I can't think of the guy's name. But he's a pretty big interviewer in
Yeah.
the network news space. But I cannot remember the dude's name to save my life.
Yeah, I'll throw it in the show notes for people to check out because I really do think that that sort of thinking I may cause a little stir in you at first, but I think it often gets you to think a little bit less about yourself and more about the bigger picture, which is ultimately what can help you with your happiness levels. But the next thing I'd love to ask is what's a habit that you're curious about adopting in your life that you haven't yet tackled?
Meditation is a big one for me. Um, because I've always had ADHD, I think that it's really difficult for me to sit still, truly come in touch with my breathing to a point where I can meditate. I've done float tanks before. I've done the sensory deprivation chamber float tank things. Um, and I think that that works for me because I'm physically locked in a floating tank, so I can unwind. But I find it really difficult to sit still and meditate just in my room or in any space. And another one that I would like to adopt is gratitude journaling or physically writing down the things that I'm grateful for every day. I know a lot of people that are quite successful that have that habit and ritual. And I think that it'd be something worth implementing into my daily routine in 2018.
You know, it's funny that you talk about rest because rest I think is so it's just not sexy for people. It's not cool and it's actually it's almost harder than actually pushing it, I think. Is rest and knowing that the time that you need rest is not when your body goes, "Hey, shut off right now and rest." It's actually those times when it's just like, everything's actually going along good because that's when it pays off. Like it'll actually pay off when you do the meditation, when you're just kind of like balanced with things. Because there's a big difference too between like just your body shutting down or just having a nice like 5 minute. I think, dude, if you're really serious about getting into meditation, check out the Calm app. That thing has been
I
my
have it on my
lifesaver.
phone and it's
Yes.
untouched because, as I said, it is a uphill battle for me, which is why I want to do it. I like challenges. I like taking things on that aren't necessarily easy. So maybe 2018 will be the year where I become a master meditator.
Yeah. Hey, and if it's not for you, it's not for you. So don't feel like you suck if you can't get into it. Some people are really hard on themselves with that kind of stuff. But this show is just I'm telling you guys, you matter and you're enough all the time. The next thing I'd like to ask you though is if you had 3 minutes, Danny, to record a um just a saying or something that you want your family members to remember you from, or you want your loved ones to remember you from, or you just want the world to really know. What are you gonna include in those 3 minutes?
Oh my gosh, that is very esoteric. I don't know. I think that leaving an impact, making a difference, touching the lives of the people around you, truly taking into account how fortunate you might be to be where you're at. I mean, I so often take for granted how fortunate I am not only to have the things that I have, but the people that I have in my life. And never take for granted how lucky we are just living in this country, for example, here in America, to have the freedoms that we have, the things available to us that we have. If I had 3 minutes, I would absolutely express the importance and sentiment of being grateful. I would make a huge push to try to squeeze the importance for being well and healthy into that 3 minutes, even though I could talk about that for 30 minutes. Um, and I would tell all the people closest to me how much I love them, how much I appreciate them, and how grateful I am for them making me the best version of myself every day and being the driving force behind my desire to be successful and make an impact.
Wow. 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 Thank you, Danny, for sharing that. We'll have to get you back on, man. Do another 30-minute episode of just all the things you'd like to say. Because that's actually one of my ideas. And if you're listening to this right now and you steal this idea company, I'm gonna hunt you down. But as is literally a company that goes out there and sets up fake funerals for people. And before you've actually had your funeral, you know what it's like uh, to have it. And, the people that are in your life, they matter a lot. And we forget that through the craziness of life and just being reminded how much impact we are leaving on each other. And I think everyone should have the chance and the opportunity to have that. So, with that being said, since we just got a little esoteric and deep, I'd like to leave it off with something a little bit more exciting. What is Danny excited to tackle, and what is he curious about learning, and what is he looking forward to in the future?
I want to be an expert in my field. I want to be the best strength and conditioning coach, personal trainer, wellness coach that I can be. If that takes me down the route of formal education to getting my doctorate degree and being involved in a more institutionalized education platform, then awesome. If it's making a difference on the social media space and podcasting, then awesome. But I am really excited to scale up the difference I make in people's lives in 2018. And I'm going to put the pedal to the metal and make that happen.
I believe you will. That's why I want you on the show. You guys, this guy is going to blow up. I promise you he's going to blow up. Danny Matranga, please check him out. If they want to get a hold of you, Danny, because let's put it to the pudding. Or let's say proof is in the pudding. That's what I want to say. Not pudding. Not
I
pudding.
kind of like put it to the pudding. I mean, that sounds pretty good.
But if people want to reach out to you, where can they get at you?
You can find me on Instagram at mindpumpdanny. All of my email contact is very easily reached through there. Um, and that's the predominant space that I occupy on the internet as of right now. I plan on scaling that up when I have some more free time, but right now, me, my clients, my trainers, that's my big focus. But I will continue to publish actionable, positive, and educational content on that platform. So I would love to interact with any and all of you in that space if possible.
That's awesome. Yes. And I will include all that stuff in my show notes. So, guys, you don't need to stop driving now and write this down. You'll find it in the show notes. And guess what? Another thing is going to happen is I am going to allow you guys to join Scratch Your Own Itch Facebook group, Creating a Life Worth Living. If you want to join that, I'm sure Danny will be in there too. I'm going to try to get him in there. So if you have a question about this kind of stuff, just please don't go and hurt yourself by, you know, being more confused. Go to where you can get solid expertise in this area, and Danny is there to help. Um, and I'm here to help too. So, of course, if you guys are just confused and you want to feel like you want to create a life worth living, get on that. And but last but not least, I just want to say thanks again, Danny, for coming on Scratch Your Own Itch.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me, and thank you for creating a place and a message for those out there that need a little light to continue to thrive and live. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course, man.
Continue to thrive and live. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, there's another episode of Scratch Your Own Itch. So, if you found any of this insightful, instructive, maybe it's really making you think, or maybe it's actually creating something inside of you where you just have to jump onto it right away, then please share this episode, because great messages are meant to be shared. And also, don't forget to subscribe to an episode of Scratch Your Own Itch, because when you do, then you're notified on every single time an episode rolls out. And also, if you don't mind taking a little bit of time out of your day to just leave a review and just tell me honestly what you think of the show. And email me, Logan at LoganTylerNelson.com. Again, that's Logan at LoganTylerNelson.com if you want to start a podcast of yourself and start telling your story. Although, I have to warn you, I don't take everybody, only because I want to make sure that their message is going to be for the best, to be unique. Because when you're unique, you don't have any competition. When you're just being you, instead of trying to be like anybody else or everybody else. I want to help you break out of your mental hibernation and start creating a life worth living. And don't ever forget, you matter and you're enough.